When I bought the house on Hollow Creek Lane, I thought I was buying peace. After 22 years in the Army, 2 deployments, 1 divorce, and more hospital time than I care to tally, I just wanted a quiet neighborhood with a decent porch and a yard for my mutt Max. And Hollow Creek looked like that kind of place. Rows of tidy, ranch-style homes, kids riding scooters, porch lights on at dusk. That vaguely nostalgic smell of fresh-cut grass and charcoal briquettes on Saturdays. I moved in mid-May, and by Memorial Day weekend, I had the flagpole installed. Nothing extravagant, just a sturdy 6-footer on the porch column. From it, I flew the stars and stripes with one small addition. A rectangular black patch stitched into the lower right corner. It bore the initials S.R.J. and the years 1981 to 2006. Those were Seth's. Sergeant Seth Raymond Johnson. My best friend. We met in basic and served half a lifetime side by side. He saved my life in Iraq and lost his in Afghanistan. I told his mum I'd never let him be forgotten. So yeah, the flag mattered. A lot. It lasted 5 days before the notice arrived. A manila envelope in my mailbox. Hollow Creek Estates Homeowners Association, Compliance Division. That was my first taste of Marjorie Littleton's stationery. Pristine, heavily serifed, and utterly devoid of soul. Inside was a 3-page document, formal tone, passive aggression turned up to 11. Dear Mr. Mitchell, you are in violation of Hollow Creek Estates Covenant, Article 6, Section 3, B. No signage, flags, banners, or symbols shall be displayed without prior written approval from the Architectural Review Committee. I reread it 3 times. My first thought was, they're joking, right? They weren't. There was a time-stamped photo of my front porch, a red arrow pointed accusingly at the flag. The offending element was labeled, Unapproved Alteration to National Symbol. A $150 fine was assessed, payable within 15 days. I felt my jaw lock. My hands were shaking, not with rage, but with that dull, bitter ache of recognition. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was about power. So I did what I thought was reasonable. I wrote a letter. Polite, respectful. I explained the meaning of the patch, my service, Seth's story. I included a photo of us in uniform, standing on a tarmac in Kandahar. I even cited the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005, thinking maybe they just didn't know. A week later, I got a single-sentence response. Your appeal has been received. Please allow up to 30 business days for review. Continued non-compliance will result in additional penalties. That's when the second notice arrived. This time, my mailbox. Apparently, the HOA had adopted a new uniform mailbox design 6 months ago, a black metal number with a curved top and a brass-plated flag. Mine? Matte gray. Had come with the house, wasn't hurting a soul, violation, $75 fine. The third arrived 2 days later, excessive lawn ornamentation. That one hit deeper than I expected. See, I have a little stone under the maple tree in the front yard. It says, Good Boy, Maximus 1.0 inches, a tribute to my first dog, the original Max, who'd made it through 3 PCS moves and once sniffed out a gas leak before it went boom. It's subtle, the size of a dinner plate, half covered in grass most days. But apparently, it disrupted the natural visual harmony of the lawn. Another $50. 3 fines in less than 10 days, totaling $275. That's when I walked into the HOA office for the first time. It's a squat brick building off Oakleaf Drive, with a little wooden sign that says Community Matters. The front desk woman looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. When I asked to speak to someone about the flag notice, she hesitated. Mrs. Littleton doesn't take walk-ins, she said. I paused. Then she'll need to learn. Because I didn't fight in 2 wars to be fined for a flag. A door creaked open down the hall. And there she was. Marjorie Littleton. The woman, the myth, the polyester-clad menace. She walked like a principal on her 3rd decade of telling kids to spit out gum. Her gray curls were sprayed into submission, and her reading glasses hung on a red, white, and blue beaded chain. Oh, the irony. She didn't greet me. Just looked me up and down and said, Mr. Mitchell, everything we sent you is in compliance with our policies. I told her about the memorial, the patch. Seth. She pursed her lips like I'd tracked mud onto her white carpet. That may be, but we have procedures, she said. If we make an exception for you, we have to make one for everyone. I could practically hear the air quotes around everyone. I left before I said something I'd regret. That night, I stood on my porch, looking up at the flag, swaying gently in the humid Carolina breeze. Max leaned against my leg. I sipped cheap beer from a plastic cup, and felt the tight coil in my chest start to wind. I'd come here looking for peace. But sometimes, peace has to be earned. Not in a war zone. Not with bullets. But in the endless, grinding trenches of petty bureaucracy. And I've fought worse enemies than Marjorie Littleton. The next week, it rained envelopes. Bright white ones. Official-looking ones. Some with watermarks. All stamped with the HOA seal, like they were issuing royal decrees instead of $50 fines. Max started barking every time the mail truck pulled up. Not because of the carrier, but because I had started barking first. 5 new violations in 8 days. Violation number 4. Improper trash can placement. I'd left mine visible on the side of the house instead of storing it in a designated concealment area. I looked around. Half the block had visible bins. Violation number 5. Vehicle overstay. My truck was parked in my driveway for more than 72 hours. I'm not kidding, I had to check the bylaws twice to believe it. Apparently vehicles are supposed to be rotated or garaged to prevent visual stagnation. My truck was a 2019 Ford F-150. Not a rusting El Camino. But Marjorie apparently saw it as a crime against the community vibe. Violation number 6. Pet control. Max barked, once, at a squirrel, midday. Someone complained, and I was informed that repeated disturbances may constitute a nuisance. Violation number 7. Unauthorized outdoor furniture. My porch had a rocking chair I bought from a local vet's co-op, handmade, solid oak, no logos, no wild colors. Just a simple rocker and a side table. Non-compliant material and unapproved design. Violation number 8. Exterior wall discoloration. This one made me laugh out loud, a first, in all of this. Apparently, a faint streak on the side of my siding where rainwater had run down was deemed inconsistent with uniform visual standards. I looked up at the identical streaks on 3 neighboring houses and just shook my head. In total, $485 in new fines. They weren't just nickel and diming me, they were weaponizing the rulebook, like some deranged HOA version of waterboarding. Just keep dripping, paper after paper. Until I cracked, but I didn't. Instead, I bought a binder, a big, red, 3-inch thick binder that I labeled Operation Overkill. Every notice went in there. Each one hole-punched, tabbed and dated. I bought a pack of those little colored flags lawyers use in depositions, and marked anything that seemed contradictory, vague, or downright stupid. By mid-July, my binder had 3 sections. 1. Violations, all my infractions. 2. Neighborhood watch, pictures of other homes with the same violations getting no letters. 3. Correspondence, every letter I'd sent or received. I also bought a voice recorder. It fit neatly in my pocket and became my new habit. Click it on any time I dealt with anyone from the HOA. If Marjorie was going to bury me under bureaucracy, I was going to arm myself with evidence. The first time I used it was when I stopped by to ask about my truck. I kept it casual. "You said I can't park in my own driveway for more than 3 days?" I asked, recorder rolling. Marjorie, behind her desk like a queen guarding her realm, sipped decaf from a Teach Love Inspire mug and replied, "Technically yes, it must be moved or stored appropriately. The rule's been in place since 2011. But Mr. Patterson across the street, his Jeep hasn't moved in 2 weeks." She smiled. "Mr. Patterson is on the landscaping committee. He's a volunteer." I smiled back. "So, volunteers are exempt?" "Of course not," she said quickly. "But we try not to discourage civic participation." Click. Gotcha. That one went into the correspondence folder, marked with a bright red tab labeled Selective Enforcement. The next recording was from the neighborhood pool, where, coincidentally, I wasn't allowed to go because I had outstanding compliance issues. But I went anyway, not to swim but to talk. Quietly. Patiently. Like I'd learned to do in Afghanistan, with locals who were just as tired of being steamrolled by bad actors pretending to care about their community. That's when I met Claire. Claire Martin, 38, single mum of 2, and one of the nicest people I've met in years. She told me about the swing set. Apparently, 6 months ago, she put one in for her daughters. Bright blue and yellow. Not exactly subtle, but nothing offensive. The HOA ordered her to remove it because she hadn't submitted an exterior recreation equipment application and failed to pay the $100 non-refundable design review fee. When she pushed back, they fined her $250 and threatened a lien. She cried while telling me that one. Then came Mark. A Gulf War vet in his late 50s. He tried to install a small wheelchair ramp for his wife after her surgery. HOA said no. The ramp was not in line with front-facing visual harmony and projected a commercial or institutional appearance. And then Jamie, a 16-year-old high schooler who was fined $50 per day for leaving his basketball hoop out overnight. Property enhancement devices must be stored when not in use, the letter had said. I started to realize something. It wasn't just me, it was everyone. Everyone who didn't fit into Marjorie's vision of cookie-cutter perfection. Veterans, single mums, teenagers, dogs. Anyone who made noise or painted outside the lines. And they were all suffering in silence. Because who wants to go up against an HOA? They hold your house hostage. They threaten liens. They drown you in rules and fine print. And most people, they just roll over. Remove the swing set. Move the mailbox. Paint the shutters beige and say thank you for the privilege. But I'd spent my entire career reading between the lines. I'd fought worse people with fewer tools. And now I had a binder full of contradictions, a recorder full of double standards, and a neighborhood full of quietly angry residents. The HOA wanted to play by the letter of the law. Fine, so would I, and I'd read every single one of them out loud in public when the time came. It started with a Facebook post, nothing dramatic, just a picture of my binder, the red one, thick as a Bible, and a caption that said, "If anyone else has received HOA violations that seem excessive, I'd like to hear about them. Message me. No judgment, just neighbors helping neighbors." I didn't even tag the HOA's page. I figured I'd get 2 or 3 quiet replies, maybe someone saying, "I thought it was just me." By the end of the day, I had 16 DMs. By the end of the week, 64. Each message was its own little tragedy. A front yard garden torn out. A teenager's art mural scrubbed from a fence. A grandfather fined for flying the North Carolina flag on game day. And worst of all, the stories that came with tears. There was Eleanor, 74, who got written up for visible laundry after hanging her late husband's flannel shirts to dry in the backyard. "I like the smell," she told me, voice cracking. "It reminds me of when he was alive." There was the Simons family, whose autistic son loved spinning pinwheels in the yard. The HOA demanded they remove them. Said it looked cluttered. They complied after the second warning. The kid didn't eat for 2 days. There was Carlos, a nurse who worked 12-hour night shifts and left his porch light on for safety. The HOA told him it created unwelcome nighttime glare. He was fined $50 per week until he switched to an HOA-approved wattage. That week, I printed out every story, clipped the names, and filed them in a new section of the binder, testimonies. I didn't know what I was going to do with them yet, but I knew they mattered. The Facebook group grew fast. I called it We the Residents. Private, invite only at first. Just a place to share notices, ask questions, vent safely. But within 10 days, we had over 200 members, nearly half the neighborhood. That was when things really started to shift, because once people started talking, they didn't stop. One night, I hosted a grill event in my backyard. Nothing official. Just hot dogs, sodas, and a lot of lawn chairs. I expected maybe 10 folks. 30 showed up. We didn't talk politics. We didn't talk about who left their trash bins out. We talked about how it felt to be policed for every inch of our lives. "It's like living in a dollhouse and Marjorie's the one arranging all the furniture," said Dennis, who'd been fined for repainting his shutters the wrong shade of navy. People laughed. For the first time in a while. And I realized something. These weren't weak people. They weren't helpless. They were just scared. Scared of the fines. Of liens. Of retaliation. That fear had been Marjorie's power. But once people started sharing their stories, that fear cracked. I started going to HOA meetings, not just as a resident, but as a note-taker. Sat in the back with my binder and my recorder. I asked polite, pointed questions. Could you clarify what constitutes excessive lawn decor? Do we have a consistent enforcement policy for mailbox style? Has anyone on the board reviewed the ADA compliance requirements for accessibility features like ramps? Marjorie hated it. At the July meeting, she tried to gavel me into silence, said I was disrupting the process. I responded by quoting Article 4, Section 2A of the HOA Charter, which guarantees all residents the right to address the board with reasonable queries during open session. She glared at me like I'd kicked her cat. But the real shift happened when Linda Ferguson spoke up. Linda had lived on Hollow Creek for 22 years. She was known for her Halloween displays, elaborate, themed productions with fog machines, animatronics, the whole 9 yards. The HOA had let her do it for years. Then, suddenly, last fall, she got 3 back-to-back violations. Improper use of seasonal materials, non-standard yard lighting, noise after 9 p.m. She stood up at the mic and said, loud and clear, "I used to love this community. Now I feel like I live in a prison with better landscaping." Dead silence. Then someone clapped. Then 2 people. Then, the whole damn room. Even the board looked uneasy, except Marjorie, who stared at her notepad like it owed her money. After that, everything accelerated. I met with a local attorney, Monica Grant, a pit bull in pumps, with a specialization in HOA overreach cases. She agreed to work with us pro bono for the first few weeks, helped us file FOIA-style requests for internal HOA communications, helped us start drafting a petition to amend certain bylaws. We also uncovered something interesting. Marjorie had been president for 7 years. The charter caps leadership terms at 3, but she'd paused hers during a bylaw rewrite in 2019, citing emergency continuity provisions. Yeah, we flagged that hard. The Facebook group started polling residents. What rules would you like changed? What fines felt unfair? Would you support a vote to remove current board leadership? Answers poured in. People weren't just frustrated, they were ready. And here's the thing about rules. When they're built in shadows, they only survive as long as everyone stays quiet. We were done being quiet. I never thought I'd be in a war room again. This one had patio chairs and lemonade instead of sandbags and radio static. But the strategy? Just as serious. We met in Claire Martin's garage on a hot Sunday afternoon, fans spinning, whiteboards up. Monica, our legal bulldog, pacing in front of an old ping-pong table, while a dozen of us took notes like we were planning a heist. Except this time, we weren't robbing a bank. We were reclaiming our neighborhood. Monica started with the term limit clause. Your HOA charter says no board member may serve more than 3 consecutive years unless an emergency prevents re-election. Marjorie's been in office for 7. Her emergency was a bylaw review that never actually passed. That's not a pause, that's a power grab. We'd verified it. The proposed changes in 2019 had never been formally ratified by quorum, only discussed in closed session, with no vote documented in the minutes. In HOA land, that's the equivalent of a coup. Next came the selective enforcement file. I'd been collecting photos, dates, times, neighboring houses with the exact same so-called violations, no fines, no letters, a red flag here, an unauthorized mailbox there. We even had one guy, Dale Withers, who openly admitted that he bragged about his illegal pergola at poker night. Marjorie likes me, Dale had shrugged. Said I bring good energy to the block. Cool. Now Dale's pergola had its own tab in the binder. Then Monica showed us her ace. North Carolina General Statute 47F. The state law governing homeowners associations. Turns out, HOA boards can be dissolved with a 2/3 majority vote from the residents. If you can demonstrate mismanagement, selective enforcement, or failure to adhere to governing documents. Guess what we had? All 3, but Monica cautioned us. This isn't a coup, it's a campaign. That means optics matter. You don't just attack Marjorie, you shine a light on what's broken, and offer a better way. So we did. We launched Phase 1. Awareness. We printed flyers. Glossy, colorful, non-threatening. Do you know your rights as a resident? They asked. They listed the top 5 HOA violations people had received, quoted relevant bylaws, and invited folks to a community conversation at the local library. Nothing aggressive. Just a friendly let's talk. Over 70 people showed up. Claire and I spoke first, then Eleanor, then Carlos. The room was silent, and then it was buzzing. With questions, with outrage, with that long-suppressed sense of, why didn't we do this sooner? Then came Phase 2, documentation. We launched a Google form for residents to log violations and fines. Within days, we had a spreadsheet of over 150 entries. Monica called it a litigation buffet. We also made a community website, WeTheResidentsHollowCreek.org. Clean design. Resources. Bylaws. A breakdown of each board member's term, voting history, and contact info. We weren't doxing. We were documenting. And then came Phase 3. Pressure. I scheduled a sit-down with the HOA treasurer, Doug Spiller, a nervous man with a beer gut and a golf tan. He looked like someone who deeply regretted saying yes to board duties back in 2018. Doug, I said, recorder running, how comfortable are you with the fact that Marjorie has been issuing fines without formal review? He blinked. She reviews them with us. When? Usually after. Sometimes during board calls. But those aren't public, right? They're not recorded in meeting minutes. Doug, I said, smiling, you know what selective enforcement is, right? He shifted. Look, I didn't sign up for this to get into fights. I thought I'd be approving flower beds. I nodded. That's exactly what we're trying to get back to. He started avoiding meetings after that. Next, we drafted the petition. Simple, clear language. We, the undersigned residents of Hollow Creek Estates, respectfully call for a special election to reconstitute the HOA board, in accordance with term limits and community input, pursuant to Section 8, Subsection 3 of the HOA Charter. We needed 67% of homeowners to sign. We got 72% in 2 weeks. That's when the leak happened. An anonymous email landed in my inbox from a burner account, hollowcreektruths@protonmail.com. It had 4 attachments, HOA internal memos, all signed by Marjorie. One of them was a draft letter titled, Preemptive Action Against Problem Residents, in which she proposed fining non-conforming homeowners for secondary violations, to encourage them to leave or comply. It mentioned me by name. Claire too. I didn't leak it to the group. Monica said not yet, but I did print it. And I brought it, with the binder, to the August HOA general meeting. The room was packed. Standing room only. People brought lawn chairs and iced coffees like it was a tailgate. Marjorie sat at the center of the folding table, gavel in hand, teeth clenched so hard I thought they might fuse. I waited until the end of the open session. Then I stood up, raised my hand and calmly said, I'd like to submit a petition for a special election, signed by over 2/3 of this community. Gasps. A few claps. Marjorie didn't blink. You can leave it with the secretary. I held it up. Also, I'd like to submit these documents, detailing multiple violations of term limits, selective enforcement, and a proposed strategy of punitive fines, to coerce resident behavior. Now she blinked. The room went completely silent. I placed the binder on the table like a mic drop and walked back to my seat. She didn't say a word. The secretary's hands were shaking as she took it. That was the beginning of the end. The notice came 3 days after the meeting. The Hollow Creek HOA Board acknowledges receipt of the petition submitted August 15th, and will begin the review process as outlined in Section 8, Subsection 4 of the Charter. Residents will be notified of next steps within 30 business days. Classic stall. Monica called it a bureaucratic tourniquet, a tactic to buy time, deflect attention, and try to kill momentum. But this time, momentum had its own legs. Because while the HOA reviewed us, the community started reviewing them. The Facebook group exploded. We passed 400 members, then 500. That was nearly everyone in the neighborhood, minus a few board loyalists, and people who still thought the HOA mailed their Netflix DVDs. People who had never spoken at meetings were now showing up early, speaking up loud. We launched a weekly watchdog newsletter, brief summaries of board actions, explained in plain English, with links to actual bylaws and meeting minutes. Monica started hosting free Know Your Rights Zoom calls on Sunday nights. We posted signs, polite ones, at the entrances to Hollow Creek. Did you know? Your HOA president is past her legal term limit. Learn more at WeTheResidentsHollowCreek.org. And then came the big break. One morning, I woke up to 47 text messages and a front porch full of doorbell cam footage. Neighbors had dropped off muffins, coffee, and in one case, a small plastic trophy that read, most likely to dismantle a regime. Why? Because we'd gone viral. A local news station, WRAL Carolina Watch, ran a feature, Veteran Battles HOA Over Memorial Flag, A Community Pushes Back. They'd picked it up off a tip, bless you Claire, and interviewed me standing right there on my porch. I'd spoken from the heart, about the flag, the memorial patch, about Seth, and service, and wanting to live in a place that respected both freedom and community. Then they interviewed Eleanor, standing beside her laundry line, and Mark, beside the ramp that had finally been installed, without HOA approval, 2 days prior. And Carlos, who looked dead into the camera and said, "If they want to fine me for leaving a light on so I don't get mugged coming home from a night shift, let them try." The piece aired on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday, we the residents had press requests, podcast invites, and 2 HOA law firms offering free consultations, in solidarity. By Thursday, Marjorie called an emergency closed session, and by Friday, I kid you not, Marjorie filed a cease and desist letter against me personally. It accused me of defamation, cyberbullying, and inciting community unrest. We posted it on the Facebook group with the caption, "When your flag is more dangerous than your HOA." The comments were brutal. Not cruel, just fed up. She wants quiet compliance, not community. I got fined for wind chimes last year, still bitter. Imagine being this allergic to sunlight. That weekend, something shifted. Neighbors who'd stayed neutral. They started walking up to me on the sidewalk, waving, nodding. One guy, a middle-aged IT consultant named Greg, showed up with a full Excel export of all known board actions since 2015. "Just thought this might be helpful," he said. Marjorie was losing grip, fast. And when she couldn't control the narrative, she tried to control the meetings. The September board meeting was a disaster. She opened with a prepared statement, accusing, quote, "a small group of agitators of spreading misinformation, creating a hostile civic environment, and sabotaging the peaceful governance of Hollow Creek." Doug Spiller, the treasurer, remember him, stood up and said, "Actually, we did violate term limits. I've reviewed the minutes from 2019. No quorum was met." You could hear a pin drop. Then someone from the back shouted, "Time to pack it up, Marge." People laughed, openly. Then the mic went to Claire. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She simply read the violation letter they sent her when her daughter's swing set was removed. Then she handed the mic to Linda, who read the one about Halloween. Then Eleanor. Then Carlos. Then Jamie, the kid with the basketball hoop, now taller and more confident, who stood there and said, "This was never about rules, it was about control." Marjorie tried to adjourn the meeting early, said it was no longer constructive, but the crowd wasn't moving. A motion was made right there in the room to formally call a special election. Per the charter, if enough residents voted to support it in writing, it had to be held within 30 days. Monica stood, legal documents in hand, and said, "We have signatures, certified and time-stamped." Marjorie looked cornered. Not like a villain, but like someone who couldn't believe the system she'd rigged had stopped working. She didn't gavel the meeting closed, she just left. That night she sent an email to the community with the subject line, "Transition in Leadership." In it she claimed she had, quote, "fulfilled her service to the utmost of her ability, and would be, quote, stepping down effective immediately to prioritize her health and personal matters." Translation: "I quit before you can fire me." The board scrambled to appoint an interim committee. Monica helped. So did 3 other volunteers, Claire included. We held our first open forum 2 weeks later. No violations, no threats. Just questions, ideas, actual community engagement. We even served lemonade. It was a Sunday morning in late October when I noticed it. Quiet. Not the tense, hold your breath kind of quiet, that used to fall over the neighborhood when Marjorie's compliance rover, a golf cart with a clipboard holster, rolled past. No, this was different. Peaceful quiet. The kind you notice when you've lived without it for too long. There was bird song, faint laughter from a few doors down, and the steady rhythm of Max's breathing as he lay, curled at my feet on the porch. The flag fluttered lazily in the breeze, red, white, blue and black, and for the first time in months, I didn't wonder if it would trigger a fine. I just looked at it and thought, this feels right. A lot had changed in 6 weeks. The interim HOA committee, now fully resident elected, had been working overtime. First order of business? Rewriting the bylaws, with actual community feedback this time. Gone were the absurd fines for mailbox curvature and lawn decor density. Replaced by language that focused on safety, harmony and actual neighborly conduct, not weaponized uniformity. We hosted an all-hands vote on the new charter at the community center. They printed hard copies in big fonts, served lemonade again, Claire's idea, and even had coloring sheets for the kids. It passed with 94% approval. The new flag policy? Simple. Any U.S., state, or military flag is allowed. Memorial patches, insignia, and tribute editions? Also allowed, pending respectful display. When they asked me to draft that part, I cried. Silently, in my kitchen, over a cup of instant coffee and an open laptop, it passed unanimously. The Halloween decorations came back in full force. Linda went full haunted corn maze this time, with fog machines, strobe lights, and a talking skeleton that said, "Marjorie's gone. B-O-O, yeah." No one find her. Everyone loved it. Claire's daughters got a new swing set, this time with bright pink slides and sparkly steps. The whole neighborhood chipped in to install it. Even Greg, the Excel guy, brought lemonade and power tools. Eleanor's flannel shirts danced on her laundry line again. No letters, just a smile from a passing jogger. Carlos upgraded his porch light to a motion-activated floodlight with a little sticker beneath it. "This light saves lives. Deal with it." Even Jamie got his basketball hoop back. A couple of dads joined him for a pickup game last week. Someone suggested starting a weekend league. And Marjorie? Gone. I heard through the grapevine that she moved to a condo community with stricter governance. There were rumors she tried to run for board president at her new place, and was shut down immediately. I'll admit, I smiled at that one. Not out of spite, just satisfaction. I didn't win anything fancy, no money, no plaque, just my porch, my flag, my dog, my dignity. But that was enough. Sometimes, justice doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in little things. A kid laughing on a swing, a neighbor waving as they mow their lawn, the breeze brushing against your face with no fine attached to it. Sometimes the best battles are the ones that end with nothing happening. That's what I was thinking as I sat there, coffee in hand, looking out over Hollow Creek. A little girl, probably 5 or 6, skipped past my driveway. She was drawing hearts on the sidewalk with pink chalk, her curls bouncing with every hop. Her mum followed a few steps behind, smiling as she caught my eye. "Morning, John," she said. "Morning. Flag looks good." I nodded. "Flies better without the paperwork," she laughed. "Amen." Max thumped his tail once and rolled onto his side, groaning like the world's laziest guard dog. I leaned back in my rocker and let the silence settle again. And I realized, not every battle is fought overseas. Some are fought right at home, for dignity, respect, and the freedom to live in peace.